y'all back to Ayurveda with Dr. Cotton 7.0. Your virtual doctor. Maybe. Maybe in real life, maybe in your dreams. So, I left off in the previous lesson this morning talking about viralization. And today, normally my lessons are only about 20, maybe 30 minutes. But today I'm doing a few segments because this is particularly interesting information in sex cells. If there was any righteous way to sell it, I would say that this is the most righteous way to go about doing it. Okay, not that I'm selling anything, because I'm definitely not. At least not this in this manner. Not this information in this manner. But what I am doing is sharing information as Dr. Khan 7.0 learns how to correct some imbalances in my own body while, doing the each one teach one thing. I guess you could kind of say that. I read books when I'm bored. What can I say? That's one of the things I do. Okay, so I left off earlier talking about viralization, and in the previous video it was about bringing children into the world, how we bring spirits into the world and the state that they end up in as a result of the emotional state and the internal state, physical state of the people involved, the parents involved. So, continuing, the foundation of sexual stress is a loss of ojas, which arises from sexual overindulgence. Okay? So, too much sex. We were also talking about hypersexuality and how that ties into manic, bipolar behavior. Seeing as though I do deal with neuroscience and psychology as well, as Dr. Khan. And there is the hypersexuality element to bipolar, which is a mental illness, which can be severe. There is also the sexual element for sexual predators and those with sexual afflictions and sexual perversions. So, although this is Ayurveda, which is mostly based on nutrition, it is different because of the spiritual aspect and the things that are considered with regard to the way that the nutrition is affecting the internal function of your body and the external function and appearance. Say sushi makes me handsome, because it does. So I haven't been eating it lately. Obviously sushi is expensive in America. If you want to get good sushi, it's definitely a little expensive, and I'm on a limited income, and I'm not getting food stamps for whatever reason, because I don't know, the government can't figure out how to run itself anymore, which is clear from the news. But anyway, won't go too far into that anarchy. But these are the days of our lives. So anyhow, continuing about sexual overindulgence, many modern couples fail to take the time to properly enjoy sex and seek only self-gratification instead of mutual satisfaction. And I had just been talking about that in the previous video where we were discussing the emotional state of the individuals involved in creating a child and how that energy is transmitted into the zygote, which is the cell that a child is formed from, the embryo is formed from, and provides a foundation of satisfaction on which the child can base his life. That's a direct quote from the book down there on page 162. Okay? So, many modern couples fail to take the time to properly enjoy sex and seek only self-gratification instead of mutual satisfaction. So, I talk often about the Western entertainment industry, social media influencing, and so on. As I said, sex sells because it's made so commercial and so superficial. We talk about in America, they got this support sex worker thing going on, and I'm like, oh, why? That's illegal in most places of America. Why are you trying to support that? Not to mention that industry generally tends to have a lot of, well, STD cases spreading because of high risk behaviors, a lot of mental illness with drugs and alcohol, and a lot of high risk behavior involved. Why did you want to support that? But anyhow, I talk about how the Western culture trivializes sex and how we are constantly being bombarded and inundated with images with regard to sex because sex sells in America, and it is something, and it is something that if you are a spiritual person, you are looking at it and you're just like, okay, this is unnecessary. Like, just gratuitous opportunities to mention sex or show boobs or show butts, and it's just like all day, every day. It's like as I said, if you're a spiritual person, if you're a truly spiritual person, you're seeing all this stuff. And then when you walk around in the street, you see people emulating it. So, because it's influential. So, as a spiritual person, you just look at it and you're just like, why? You know what I mean? Like, you might see like some female walking around in the middle of the day, trying to look like something she's seen off of TV with just like her boobs all the way out and her butt cheeks all the way out. And you're just sitting there looking at that, and you just, unless you're a sexually predatory person, you're just sitting there looking at it, and you just be like, and this could be at like 10 o'clock in the morning, you see this, and in the cities especially, and you just be like, why? So, anyway, continuing about overindulgence and sex and quality of life. Masturbation is the culmination of this tendency, the apex of self-indulgence and gratuitous waste of energy. The repetitious performance of unsatisfying sex is certain to cause disease. So even masturbation is frowned upon because it's certain to cause disease because it's unsatisfying. You think that you're being satisfied and you feel like you're being satisfied temporarily, but ultimately you aren't really being satisfied because of the lack of connection to the other individual involved in the normal coital process, the normal process of completing the act of sexual copulation between two people. So, religiously speaking, in monotheistic religions like Islam, Christianity, from what I know of, masturbation is generally frowned upon. It's generally frowned upon as a management tool, even amongst single people. It's generally frowned upon, and I believe that is because of the aspect of abusing the body. Just as it says here in Ayurveda, it's an act of self-gratification, and it's the apex or the highest point of self-indulgence and a gratuitous waste of energy. So it's something to think about. Different people have different views, but obviously a religious person has a view about it, and someone who practices Ayurveda will also have a view about it. And based on this book, the view is it is an ultimately self-indulgent experience that leads to wasted energy. And ultimately, and will potentially cause disease because it's unsatisfying, and that it is a self-indulgent act. It's not one of mutual satisfaction that would normally occur when having a sexual experience. Individuals lose the willingness to surrender themselves to each other in sexual union when they feel vulnerable because of weak identities. Okay? So, in a relationship, some people are absorbed by their partner, meaning that they end up with a partner that kind of takes over their life, so that they have lost themselves to the point where they do only the things that their partner wants them to do or their partner will allow them to do, and they start to mimic their partner so much that, there's almost no dividing line. You want to be close with your partner, you want to be unified, but you still want to maintain some semblance of separation as in your identities. It's just like with the yin yang. It's the marriage of opposites, that meaning that there are two separate identities that have connected to produce a harmonious union or balance. So that is something to be remembered, and that is represented in masculine and female energy, which is opposites. That is represented by the idea of opposites. Lack of ojas, due especially to frequent obsessive sex, weakens the aura, and whenever anyone gets too close, subliminal alarm bells begin to go off. So here is when we would get into something like sexual predators. They have obsession with sex. So that causes damage to your aura. Obviously, as a spiritual person, that is extremely harmful to you. It's harmful to you spiritually, and it's harmful to your reputation, especially as a spiritual person or a spiritual leader. And there have been many instances, as I was discussing in Quran study with Graffiti Gigi, as well as I believe one of my Dr. Khan videos. There are many instances of very spiritual people who have gotten themselves in trouble because of sexual affairs, sexually dysfunctional and deviant behaviors, scandals. So this is something that happens in the spiritual community almost often. And I say this because of the connection to the sacral energy, the sacral chakra, and the creative energy there, and an overabundance of that. And here, as an overindulgence, sexual energy and obsessiveness when it comes to sex is a big problem. It's a problem. And it creates more problems for you in other areas of your life, including your physical health. Every personality is organized differently, and the melding of auras that occurs when two people unite sexually is inherently threatening to Ahankara. If she has been weakened by weak ojas, she can feel overwhelmed by the opposing personality, sensing that her defenses are insufficient to protect herself. She may then paroxysmally thrust the partner away, physically or emotionally. So this would be rejection of a partner. How this occurs with women who pick up on that opposing energy, that the overwhelming nature of the opposing personality, that sense that you can't defend yourself from this individual's energy, and that will cause you to reject them on a deeper level. It's because you are feeling something about their personality that leads you to feel overwhelmed, an opposing energy. Many degrees of rejuvenation exist, but rejuvenation, even to a minor degree, is possible only when you discipline your sexual activity. Sex is the third pillar of life, and your attitude to sex must reflect its importance to your health. Reverence for sex is the real significance behind the philosophy of sexual restraint called Brahmacharya. Which literally means that which brings you closer to the Creator. So here again, referencing the spiritual nature, Brahmacharya. Recognizing the spiritual and nature and its connection to the sexual energy and your physical health and emotional health and psychological health. Sex is the third pillar of life, and your attitude to sex must reflect its importance to your health. Yogis interpret this in a religious sense and follow the path of celibacy. I said earlier that I'm celibate in a separate video. And I have been for several years now. I think it's about 5 years I have been. And yeah, it's an experience. And I would definitely say that it has improved my relationship with God, Allah, the higher power, a higher energy, a higher creative energy, the creative force, universal power. I will say that. I will definitely say that. I will also say that I have been effectively using my creative energy. I have been harnessing it and using a lot of it in the meantime as well, actively. Especially with my art and the art therapy. Ayurveda interprets it to mean that which causes the creative energy of the universe to accumulate within you. Okay? So, this is the definition of sex in Ayurveda, which is Brahmacharya, and that is the sexual restraint that leads you to become closer to God, which is why yogis, in a religious sense, follow the path of celibacy. Sex is the pillar of life most closely associated with Bada. Orgasmic sex is a tremendous energy drain on the system, and it is. It is, right? If you have experience, then you are already aware of the drain that it occurs on your body and your system. If you have experience, you're already aware of that. You actually burn calories during sexual activity, and some people die during sexual activity from heart attacks. So it can be a bit of a workout, depending on your level of virility, especially since we're talking about virilization. So orgasmic sex is a tremendous energy drain on the system. Castrated salmon, for example, live twice as long as their potent counterparts simply because they do not exhaust themselves sexually. Sexual activity must always be carefully regulated lest it vitiate vata. And it is best, for example, to enjoy sex at night. So we'll get into the reason why most people like to do the business at night. Why it's customary. You know, it's like when you see it in movies and on TV and on stuff, you know, you got this romantic, somebody might set up a romantic night or night alone, or somebody sneaking in the bedroom at night. It's all normally something that's done at night. So the reason for that could be because of what I'm about to read next, which is, it is best, for example, to enjoy sex at night, since night is ruled by kapha, and vata disturbance is less likely to result from sexual exertion then. Okay. Kapha energy, which is the slower energy. Okay, when you talk about sex and a night alone and getting in the mood and, you know, lighting candles and having on your music and just setting an ambiance and the flowers and the romance and all of this. Normally this is something that occurs at night. Now, if you're doing some type of build-up or some type of courting type of thing, you might have activities that occur throughout the day. But normally when you're getting ready to get into bed is together is something that occurs at night when you're thinking about a romantic night or what have you. So there's that, and there is an actual reason for that in Ayurveda, and it's because the night is ruled by the kapha energy, and the vata disturbance is less likely to result from sexual exertion then, as far as your energetic balance of your body and your doshas and your constitution. Ayurveda suggests that orgasmic sex be limited to not more than once a week in winter. So we're here again, we're talking about timing. Perfect timing. We're talking about perfect timing. Circadian rhythms. Okay? So doshas also influence that. The circadian rhythms are also influence the doshas, okay? So there are times of day assigned to each dosha. And night, I believe between the hours of 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. mostly are the kapha times, according to your circadian rhythms. So Ayurveda suggests that orgasmic sex be limited to not more than twice a week in winter, when the body's internal fire is highest. Your chi, yeah. Your chi. In the spring and fall, once a week is the suggested maximum frequency, and in summer, when the body is ravaged by heat, sex is indicated only once every 2 weeks. So if you were going to have a schedule and you wanted to do that according to Ayurveda, well, this would be the ideal schedule based on based on the circadian rhythms and Ayurvedic medicine. Yogis are even stricter, suggesting no more than once a month. Everyone should abstain from sex during illness and convalescence and during menstruation. Okay. Yogis, sex once a month. So if your yoga teacher is a sexual predator, well, that should tell you something. If your yoga teacher is trying to have sex with the students in the class all the time, your guru always trying to have sex with people all the time, that should tell you something. That should tell you something about his internal state and his spiritual state, him or her. Because we know that there are perversions, perverted consciousness exists, and there are bad gurus. false prophets and bad gurus out here spouting stuff and leading people astray. People are becoming misguided. Because the frequency of sexual activity should be limited to preserve physical health, and because unsatisfactory sex is an important cause of disease, the quality of each sexual experience must be enhanced. Meditation alone can do this. Sex itself should not be made into a meditation or an act of ritual worship, which can actually increase ojas instead of decreasing it. So, some cultures have sex as part of their rituals. In Ayurveda, it isn't recommended because it can increase your ojas, which is something that you aren't trying to do consciously if you want to preserve your longevity. Okay, you want to ideally balance your body. One of the Upanishads, spiritual treatises that explains the hidden meanings of the Vedas, describes all life in the cosmos in terms of sacrifice into fire. The world beyond is a form of the universal fire, as is our world, and the gods send rain to transmit water from the one to the other. In the internal cosmos of the human body, the world beyond is the brain. The rain is the ojas, and the gods are the mind and the senses. Our world is the physical body. So this gives you an idea of what is described as the gods in this situation. And, well, the ojas is referenced as rain in this situation. A human body is also a fire. Its open mouth is the fuel, its breath the smoke, its speech the flame, its eyes the coals, its ears the sparks. I always call myself Graffiti Gigi, the Dragon Lady, because I spit fire. Because partly because I spit fire, and partly because while I'm in the shadows, I live in the shadows, in the underground, behind the veil, the hijab. I live behind the veil. So, continuing, into this fire, which represents the digestive process, the Agni. Into this fire, which represents the digestive process and the dhatus, the gods offer food. From this offering arises shukra. Okay? And as a matter of fact, in Buddhism, we're talking about Agni and Chi and the digestive process and the Chi fire, which is found in the belly region, actually, the sacral chakra, root chakra connection there, fueling your existence, fueling your longevity. Buddhists offer food in many offerings in appreciation to the Buddhas that have passed on and ascended, spiritually evolved out of their physical form. And that's part of the ritual, and it's an offering. So just noticing that connection, because I have a lot of information up there, so I draw parallels. Anyway, a woman's body has a special fire, a sexual fire. Oh, all of this fascination about women. We talk about women's rights and we talk about feminism, and I'm like, oh, women and sexuality, baby. You know I want to know the right way to do it. So many people out here telling us the wrong way to do it. And when you live in a Western society, you are constantly being bombarded by the wrong way to do it. And it's hard to get away from it. But if you seek spirituality and you seek a relationship with God, you can overcome it due to your personal focus and your desire to, well, stand out from amongst the crowd. Which is why all of this is in the underground. A woman's body has a special Fire, a sexual fire. During intercourse, the penis is the fuel, the pubic hairs, the smoke, the vulva, the flame, penetration, the coals, and pleasure, the sparks. Into this fire, the gods offer semen. From this offering arises a new being. So this is a description of the sex act and how it affects the women's body. From an Ayurvedic standpoint, the value that has for women, the benefit that it has on our health when it's performed properly in its highest spiritual state, it would improve our health, which is the reason why it's so important to end up with the right man, right? Spiritually. That is the reason why it's so important to end up with the right man, especially long term. And that's why ending up with the wrong man is so devastating to a woman's health, physically, mentally, emotionally, and psychologically. And it's really something to think about, especially if you practice Ayurveda. I made a kind of like a joke in a previous video when I was talking about Indian people and arranged marriages and like what I think about that. And as I said, obviously, as someone who believes in Ayurveda, I would say that what should be accomplished is to look out for the best interests of the individuals involved. The best interest being whatever is going to maximize their health and happiness. Anything other than that, I would say, would be a bad arrangement, clearly. Two people performing sex should sacrifice all restraint, all doubts and uncertainties which separate them from each other and prevent them from becoming one into the momentary unity experience of orgasm. So here we talk about the spirituality attached to having an orgasm. The thing that people who are sexually predatory, people who of perverted sexual consciousness, these people abuse this. People who are imbalanced, have sacral chakra imbalances and dysfunctions, overindulgent people, they abuse the energy of the orgasmic experience, which is supposed to be a spiritual one. And when performed correctly, is the most spiritual experience that you can have with another individual, which is why it is so sacred, and which is also why there are tribal cultures that have a sacred sexual ritual, because of the understanding of the connection between your spiritual energy and the sexual experience with regard to what is produced in you at the moment of orgasm. So you want to talk about people feeling free, and we talk about all of this sexual freedom, and people taking drugs and alcohol to free themselves so they can become liberated, and sexual liberation. Well, this is the ultimate sexual liberation, to have a partner with which you can sacrifice all of your restraint, meaning that you can have uninhibited sexual experience. There are no doubts and uncertainties, meaning that separates you from each other, which means that there's complete trust, a partner that is loyal, a partner that is committed, a partner that is monogamous. When you're speaking of two people, so that would be an interaction with two people. So a monogamous interaction with two people in this particular case, in order to experience the momentary unity of orgasm. So this is how you would benefit from a sexual experience between two individuals in a monogamous relationship